Hello there, YouTube. It's great to see you. If you're watching on the Pick Six Podcast YouTube page, smash that like button. Hit subscribe. Turn on your alerts. Get the podcast delivered to your ears and to your face via the digital platform that is YouTube. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Pick Six Podcast, CBS Sports Daily NFL Podcast. I'm Will Brinson. I'm your host. It is Thursday, April 21st, 7 days from the draft. If you are listening to this podcast, if you're watching on YouTube, it is actually 8 days away. It is 420, which is like, I don't know what it means, but people keep saying it. Anywho, joining me to talk about draft stuff, because it's, 8 days or 7 days away from the draft, Chris Trapasso and Josh Edwards. What's up, fellas?
What's going on?
Wow.
I never know who's supposed to talk first when that. So I always just defer to Josh.
For future reference, it's whoever I say first.
Ah, okay, that's good to know. That's like a host.
Fact, in my head, I panicked. I was like, do I say Josh first or Traps first?
Okay, now I'll know. It's good to know like a week out from the draft because we're going to be seeing a lot of each other.
Yeah, a lot of each other. We're going to be down in Florida. Do you guys think we'll you guys think we'll go to Jesters? You ever been to Jesters?
I have no idea where we're going.
No. Have you guys ever been to Jesters down in Fort Lauderdale?
No, this will be my first time. I mean, I started 3 years ago, and we immediately went into a pandemic. So this will be my first time.
Well, then we have to go to Jesters. You think your throat hurts now, Josh, because you got some like kitty crud? Wait till you spend 3 hours in Jesters. You want me to breathe? You have to burn your clothes. It's like it's just like you just reek of cigs. Oh, it's so disgusting. It's like Tom Fernelli's favorite place on the planet, which says a lot about Tom. Anywho, check if you're living in Fort Lauderdale, stop by Jesters and have a $1.50 Coors Light with us on one of those nights after the draft. Before we get into the draft stuff, actually, let's talk about Deebo Samuel, because as reported by Jeff Darlington of ESPN on Wednesday afternoon, Deebo Samuel, like the do-it-all running back who was featured as do-it-all wide receiver, who was featured as a running back in Kyle Shanahan's system, who put up massive numbers and is due for a huge contract extension, has requested a trade from the San Francisco 49ers. Okay, like we got, it's like, all right, we have the 15 biggest shocking things of an NFL offseason. I don't know. Let's add one more and have Deebo Samuel request a trade. Adam Schefter reported on Tuesday that the 49ers were perfectly fine with paying Deebo Samuel whatever he wanted. Like, just take the money, and Deebo didn't want it. The reason a deal hadn't happened is Deebo doesn't want to play for the 49ers. We'll get into the draft ramifications of this, but I'm curious, Traps, what's your sort of, initial reaction to the idea that Deebo Samuel wants out of San Francisco?
Yeah, there has to be more to this than just a contract disagreement, because we've seen not only a bunch of receivers move this offseason, marquee wide receivers, but we've also seen like Stephon Diggs get a gigantic extension and Christian Kirk make over $20 million per year, average per year. So it seems like if he really wanted it, based on those Schefter reports from last week, that Deebo Samuel could probably get really any type of money that he wanted. So I wonder if leading into the draft, and there's always those juicy reports on the night of the draft, that we may hear more about what is going into Deebo Samuel not wanting to be with the 49ers, a team that, he's blossomed into this multifaceted wideout running back hybrid. And there hasn't really been anything in the Kyle Shanahan's past or John Lynch's past where they're like anti-player coaches or GMs. Like they seem to be pretty well liked by their players. So I'm really interested to see if something else comes out related to this report-wise, why Deebo Samuel doesn't want to play for a perennial playoff contender in the 49ers.
Yeah, Josh, the thing too is like, excuse me, not only is it a successful team, but like he's perfect in Kyle Shanahan's system.
Absolutely.
Is it I can't believe I'm suggesting this, but is it a Jimmy Garoppolo thing?
It could be. This is all very fresh as we came on here, but I think one thing that I saw was that he has an issue with his usage in San Francisco's offense, which would be completely surprising to me because I think they've been about as creative as you could possibly be in the ways that you use Deebo Samuel. So not a lot of this is making sense right now. I actually did a story on kind of the changing of the wide receiver markets in recent years, because prior to DeAndre Hopkins's $27.25 million contract extension, in terms of annual value, we had seen just 5 wide receivers picked in the first round in the 2 years prior. In the 2 years since that extension, we've had 11 wide receivers picked in those 2 years in the first round. And now we're looking at least 5, probably 6, maybe even 7 in the first round of this year's draft. So I think we're kind of starting to see some of these teams looking at the money that's being given to these wide receivers and seeing a greater opportunity to draft young and bring in some new faces.
I mean, I don't want to poo-poo y'all's points here at all, because you guys are, you come on the podcast, you don't get paid any extra for it. You have to deal with me being late all the time. But like, I really don't think this is about the money. Yeah. I mean, and I do, certainly there are going to be some issues coming up, and we talked about this a lot on this podcast, but the DeAndre Hopkins contract was an outlier. It was a restructure that caused his money to get up to $27.5 million per year. And because, alpha receivers just, it's like, I don't care how you dummy up this contract. I want to get more than Hopkins. Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill both did that. And so now you have this like weird situation with AJ Brown, DK Metcalf eventually, Deebo Samuel, all these guys who are Terry McLaurin, who are up for after the third year, who can be extended. Like, they don't want to be like, well, we'll just take $22 million. I feel like I'm like a, 10th or 11th best wide receiver in football. No, nobody's going to do that if you think you're the best receiver in football. But I don't think this is about the money for Deebo. I think there's something else going on here, and it's very bizarre. Maybe if it's the usage, like, I mean, he turned into one of the most exciting players in professional football last year. Like, there are 3 or 4 wide receivers that you can have casual conversations about. And he jumped into that discussion because he's running out of the backfield and scoring all these touchdowns. And so, like, I guess I don't get it. Maybe the 49ers approached him about a deal that, was like, oh, well, you're kind of a running back too. So, I mean, that could have been, potentially, a speed bump for contract negotiations. I don't know, but he's not guaranteed to be traded. However, if he were traded, Traps, what landing spots do you think would work for Deebo?
Well, I think the Jets have to be the first team that you would circle, because they were, down to the wire apparently in that Tyreek Hill trade. The Saints, the Packers would make sense. It seems like if the Chiefs are wanting to transition, I know, seriously, well, they need it. But if the Chiefs are ready to transition, and there were some reports after they traded Tyreek Hill that they want to transition with Juju Smith-Schuster to like a bigger yards after the catch type wide receivers, that type of offense. Deebo Samuel is probably the ultimate guy to be in that offense with that new philosophy, if that is the case. They have the 2 first-round picks. They have a bunch of extra selections like in the top 100, top 150. I could see Brett Veach swinging for the fences there and bringing in Deebo Samuel. The only weird part would be, like, is he going to ultimately just pay him as much as Tyreek Hill? Like, that seems to be a little weird. The one theory that's popped into my head about maybe what could be the underlying issue for Deebo Samuel, maybe they've told him, hey, Trey Lance is going to take over, and maybe either Deebo, one, is not really that sold on Trey Lance from watching him in practice last year and, those few relief appearances, or they've told him, we're going to use Trey Lance in the run game, in the design run game a lot. You're not going to see as many carries and high percentage throws in your direction because we're going to incorporate Trey Lance as kind of that running threat, when without Jimmy Garoppolo, you needed that other element in the running game. And that's where Deebo Samuel had over 1,800 yards last year. That could be his usage may not be the same going forward. And I think maybe he likes to be that multi-faceted kind of pioneer at this new position.
I think the Packers and the Chiefs are fascinating landing spots for Deebo Samuel, sure, because obviously the Packers have Alan Lazard and how am I blanking?
No one.
What's that?
No one. Pretty much no one.
Well, Sammy Watkins. Sammy Watkins is who they signed. I was like, who did they sign?
Oh, yeah. I forgot about him.
But like, Sammy Watkins isn't even guaranteed to make the team out of training camp. The problem is, I don't see how, if you're San Francisco, you can reasonably trade Deebo Samuel to the Packers. It feels like they have played each other in the playoffs like 5 times. It just always feels like Shanahan's up against Matt LaFleur. You trade Deebo Samuel to Matt LaFleur and let Aaron Rodgers have Deebo, and he's going to wreck shop in Green Bay, and it could potentially be, an impediment to you making it back to the Super Bowl or making it, advancing in the playoffs. The Chiefs, you don't want to have to deal with facing Deebo in the Super Bowl, but the Chiefs would, in a heartbeat, the Chiefs give up a first-round pick for Deebo, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is it more
I think he's probably more than a first, though. I think just one first is not enough.
Yeah. I don't know. It's 2 first, though. That's kind of steep because he's due a big contract.
But the Chiefs have like a bunch of picks on day 2, right? Like they have.
Yeah, because they got those second-round picks from Miami.
They have 50 and 62. Then in round 3, 94 and 103. So,
okay,
if I'm Brett Veach,
do they have 29 and 30?
Which one?
Do they have 29 and 30?
29, 30, and then in the second round, 50, 62. In the third round, 94 and 103. So if I'm Brett Veach, I'm calling San Francisco and saying, I'll give you one of those first, and then you take your pick from those extra day 2 picks. And is that enough for Deebo Samuel, seeing as though we're going to have to give him a contract pretty close to, what we ultimately gave Tyreek Hill? But that's what I would offer, and I think that would seem kind of fair based on what we've seen at the wide receiver market this offseason.
So using the Rich Hill of Pat's Pulpit trade chart, 30 is worth 196 and 50 is worth 115. So 196 plus 115 gives you 311 points, which is roughly in between 15th overall and 16th overall. I think that's kind of fair.
Yeah, I do too.
Because remember, we're talking about these teams who, not to conflate the issue here by pointing out that producer Deebo, has noted that the Eagles could take a wide receiver, with one of those first round picks. The Saints are certainly in the market for a wide receiver, even with the contractual, obligations that you're going to have to Deebo Samuel. If you told me I can either draft like Garrett Wilson at 15 or get Deebo Samuel at 15, it's a no brainer. You take Deebo Samuel, right?
Yeah, for me. And I think it comes back to the Jets. At the end of the day, maybe they give up number 10 overall and maybe they maybe they get a little bit in return as well. Maybe it's number 10 overall for Deebo Samuel and a little bit more or something like that, considering the salary cap implications. But I think it makes a lot of sense.
I was going to say, just to your point, San Fran has 61.
61 is their first pick, yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if they could get away with giving up 105 is probably like you get 10 for Deebo and 105. Does that work?
Or even a future pick, it doesn't, whatever they decide is fair compensation, but the Jets have already shown their cards. They tried to get Tyreek Hill and that obviously did not work. It's a similar offensive scheme. You've got Robert Saleh there, who, as far as I know, is on good terms with San Francisco, having been there before. So that makes a lot of sense to me because I think the Jets are probably going to use that number 10 overall pick on a wide receiver regardless. And you already have a known commodity in Deebo Samuel. Now, the other side of this is we've already seen Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams force trades to their homes where they wanted to be. Maybe Deebo Samuel just wants to come back to Carolina. Maybe he just
nobody wants to.
No Panthers talk. No Panthers talk.
To the Panthers.
Nobody. I applaud you for worming the Panthers into this podcast, Josh. God knows we haven't had enough. By the way, I think the Panthers are out of a quarterback now. I'm convinced that they're going offensive lineman.
I kind of
back
too.
I think they're going to trade.
You see what happens when you mention Carolina? I'm immediately like, "Oh, number 6." By the way, also just totally random, but so Daniel Jeremiah is going to do NFL Live, and Mel Kiper is going to do NFL Total Access. Have you seen the photo that that the NFL Network or NFL Media sent out? They took Daniel Jeremiah's face and attached Mel Kiper's hair.
Nice,
and it's like it is absolutely Mel Kiper's face and DJ's hair, and it's okay. Look at Kiper's hair is absolutely
completely different. It's
Yeah.
The most famous hair in NFL media, I think. Still.
That's probably right.
Right? Is there anyone else that's known for their hair? I think Kuiper's that slicked back Dracula look has been going strong for 30 years. It is.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
One last thing on Deebo. Mike LaFleur was
well,
in.
Oh, never mind. He's saying that they have 29 and 30, not that they would give up 29 and 30. I mean, I don't know, man. If you're the Jets and you've been trying to get like Tyreek Hill is an incredible wide receiver, of course, but the Jets were trying to get Tyreek Hill in order to accentuate what Zach Wilson does, which throw down the field. I think they're better off getting Deebo Samuel, who similar scheme fit, right? Because you have Mike LaFleur is your OC there in New York with the Jets. And if I'm trying to make Zach Wilson's life easier, I don't want somebody who's just running vertical routes and having him like try and bomb it as deep as possible. I want somebody who's getting open underneath and picking up yak, and that's Deebo's specialty.
Well, I feel like right now Mike LaFleur is probably going nuts, like wanting to trade for Deebo Samuel because he was in San Francisco with Deebo Samuel. If there's anyone that's an offensive coordinator calling the plays that would know how to deploy Deebo better than Kyle Shanahan, it's probably Mike LaFleur who's calling those plays there with the Jets.
And with the Jets, I mean, not to disparage the Jets, but it's like all right, we're probably not going to get, we're probably not going to run into Deebo in the playoffs anytime soon. So,
Exactly.
let's send him to New York. Any other landing spots? I'm just trying to the Carolina one's not crazy, I guess. I just think I don't know if the Panthers have the assets to pull it off though. All they have is 6. You know what the perfect landing spot is for it? Well, I don't know if it necessarily qualifies now that Josh McDaniels is gone, but I mean, I said the Patriots, Deebo Samuel was a Patriots player coming out of that draft. I kept mocking him to the Pats over and over and over again. And then they freaking took in Kill Harry, and Deebo Samuel was great. All right. So that's the Deebo Samuel stuff. If you got a good landing spot, feel free to let us know. We're going to take a break and talk about some more wide receivers in the draft next.
This is it. We're back.
Come on, be my baby tonight.
Julie has a controversial history with many of us.
I'm not trying to mess with that lady.
My sexuality
made you feel uncomfortable.
That door is open and I can leave.
I'm either with you 100% or I'm not with you at all.
You didn't apologize.
I hate you.
Why did I come back here?
The Real World Homecoming, New Orleans. New season now streaming exclusively on Paramount Plus.
Just kidding. We're not going to talk about wide receivers. I can't read anything.
I checked my notes. I was like, are we talking receivers today?
I was like, what is happening here? We're talking defense. There really is like some Ron Burgundy factor here where I look and it says wide receivers, like parentheses Ryan. I'm like, all right, Ryan, what do you think about your top receiver? You're like, Will, it's me, Chris. It's not an impressive feature, or it's like Wilson was just gonna say, it's not a bug, it's a feature. Let's talk. I'm trying to make sure this is right. Let's talk edge rankings first. Traps, you have your top 5 edge players in this draft. Have we just eliminated? I feel like everybody's on board with edge. I like it.
Yeah, this is one of draft Twitter's greatest achievements. That for the longest time, before I was at CBS, everyone in the draft Twitter sphere was just saying edge. Stop saying 3-4 outside linebacker, 4-3 defensive end. They all got to play on the edge. So yeah, I think everyone is like a general consensus now that it's just edge rushers. Like, are you guys cool with that? Because I'm definitely cool with it. Yeah,
absolutely. By the way, for whatever it's worth, just on the circle back on Deebo Samuel, Ian Rappaport tweeted out, Rap Sheet tweeted out, the Jets, the Packers, the Chiefs, and the Lions.
Oh,
Lions are spicy.
32 overall?
Yeah, probably 32 overall and something else. 32 and 34 for Deebo.
There you go.
That might be too much. But if there's a bidding war, it could end up happening. Anyway, your top 5 edge players.
My top 5 edge players: Aiden Hutchinson at 1, Kayvon Thibodeau at 2. I have a little bit of a curveball: Arnold Ebiketie from Penn State at 3, George Karlaftis, Josh Sky at 4, and Boye Mafe at 5. I think with Arnold Ebiketie being that surprise selection at 3, he's a little bit smaller. He's like 6'3", 250, but he gives you a lot of what Aiden Hutchinson does just at a smaller size. He's got pass rushing moves. speed to power conversion, bend. He really checks all the boxes for me. I have a first round grade actually on all of these edge rushers. Boye Mafe is my number 32 overall player in this draft class. Most notably, I'm way lower on Travon Walker. He's my buyer beware prospect, more so than anyone else in this draft class, and Jermaine Johnson from Florida State. And I think the Jermaine Johnson one has probably gotten me more heat than the Travon Walker one because Jermaine Johnson had a really good season at Florida State. His highlight reel is fantastic. I just think he's a little stiff around the corner and is good in a face-up situation, but I don't know if he's bending the edge, winning with a variety of pass rushing moves. I like Travon Walker. I like Jermaine Johnson, but I think outside of my top 5 and into the second round is where I would feel a lot more comfortable drafting them than where they'll ultimately go.
So there's some really interesting stuff going on in the betting market as it relates to these edge guys, because Aiden Hutchinson, let's bring up old Caesars. Aiden Hutchinson's still the favorite to go first overall, but actually, I guess I don't think I've said this on the podcast, but I don't know if I'm technically reporting this, but I have a pretty good source telling me that Travon Walker's going 1 to the Jaguars.
And it's not Pete Prisco, you said, right?
It's not. No. Pete Prisco's like, man, you're taking Evan Neal. Evan Neal or Hutchinson. You're crazy. I'm not reporting. I'd bet it. I would bet it if I were you guys, or anyone who wants to bet Travon Walker first overall. I would bet it now.
What are his odds now?
Let's see.
It's gotten pretty close.
Yeah, it's that's what I was going to say is it's really trimmed down. And then the other thing that's really interesting is that Kayvon Thibodeau to go second overall has gotten absolutely steamed, which is wild, because if I'm right and Travon Walker goes 1, and can you imagine Aiden Hutchinson going 3? Is that plausible?
I really don't think so, because I had heard that Detroit wasn't as high on Thibodeau as they are Hutchinson. That's kind of why it would be a little surprising to me. From a talent perspective.
Sorry, just to jump in here on the first overall pick, Aiden Hutchinson -160. That is the cheapest it's been in quite some time. And Travon Walker +140. The 2 tackles 14-1. Sorry, Josh, go ahead.
From a talent perspective, I can totally understand that. I mean, I have Thibodeau rated ahead of Hutchinson in this draft class, so I can absolutely understand why they might go in that direction at number 2.
Is your order Thibodeau and then Hutch, Josh?
Yeah, it is. It is. It's Thibodeau. There's a little bit of a gap, then Hutchinson, Travon Walker, George Karlaftis kind of bunched together there. So
there's also this. Josh, I appreciate you fighting through. You can tell you're please don't give out as I'm speaking. I've been there. Usually mine happens when I'm coming back from a weekend at Vegas or Asheville or something like that. But anyway, I digress. The other sneaky thing about this number 1 overall pick that is not being talked about loudly enough is that I don't think that Trent Baalke is going to draft a Jim Harbaugh guy. I think he hates him. Why would he give Jim Harbaugh the credit by drafting a Michigan player number 1 overall?
The hate goes that deep.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And do you think it's possible that Jim Harbaugh is, potentially poisoning Hutchinson against Trent Baalke? That's not that crazy, right?
No, I don't think it is. I think those two, with what happened in San Francisco, how successful they were, and then Harbaugh is out, Baalke survived for a little bit longer. I think, that could certainly be a thing where neither of those two want Aiden Hutchinson to go number 1 overall, which if you're evaluating prospects, you probably don't want something like that factoring into your consideration. And it wouldn't even be crazy if right now the Jaguars don't even know what they're going to do. They're going to not know until Thursday, April 28th.
There was, I think that there's I think it's entirely plausible that the Jaguars have not decided what they're going to do. And you got to remember too, when you're talking about these number 1 overall picks, it's not just as simple as Trent Baalke's all right, we're going to Travon Walker and that's it. you have to run when it's the first round picks, you are running by the owner. Like you have to go to the owner and say, here's what we're thinking. This is why it's going to work. I thought it was interesting that Lance Zierlein pointed out, and I think maybe I noted this with Wilson, but he was like, I'm telling you, he's like, I got some really good info on Trayvon Walker going 1 to the Jaguars. And then he's like, and then like a follow-up, he's like, and then I heard like 4 people saying the exact same thing that I was told, which is, it's like an Uno reverse smokescreen where suddenly you're not sure if what you're being told is actually the good info, and maybe it's them trying to prop up. I don't know what the point of the Jaguars propping, like why the smoke screening at one makes no sense, but then again, the Jaguars make no sense. So
it reminds me of when Dave Gettleman in 2018 was like, we are picking Saquon Barkley at 2. And everyone's like, yeah, right. They're going Sam Darnold, Josh Allen. And then the next year, we love Daniel Jones. We're going to pick him at 6. And everyone's like, no way, you're not picking Daniel Jones at 6. And Dave Gettleman like did that reverse psychology where he was like, I'm picking these players that I told you I was going to pick the whole time. No one believed me. Not the best decisions for Dave Gettleman, those 2 selections. And this could be the same with Trayvon Walker at 1.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing about Trayvon Walker, and you see Deebo's got it up on the screen, if you're watching on YouTube, youtube.com/pick6, he has the fastest 40-yard dash by a player 270 pounds or more at the combine since 2000. And the other guys, right behind him, he had 4.5 140, which is just ridiculous.
Yeah,
Nick
crazy.
Perry 4.55, Ziggy Ansah 4.56, Adalius Thomas 4.56, and Rashawn Gary 4.58. Like I don't know that you would definitely say that all of those guys have been elite in their careers, but all those guys have been pretty productive. And the thing that you hear from Trip Baalke is it just comes back to that Alden Smith comp, and he took Alden Smith over Cameron Jordan and JJ Watt, and like at least until Alden Smith got in trouble off the field, it wasn't that terrible of a decision.
Yeah, and actually from that graphic, my comparison for Trayvon Walker is Ziggy Ansah. I think they're so similar. The combines are similar. Coming out of BYU, Ziggy Ansah was like doesn't really know what he's doing on the field, but you just saw him go so high in the draft to the Lions, in the top 5 in that 2013 draft class because the talent was through the roof. He didn't know how to use his hands. The pass rushing moves weren't there yet. That's how I feel about Trayvon Walker. And I think if you pick Ziggy Ansah at 1 overall, would the Jaguars be happy with that? Like you mentioned, like he had a good career, but not amazing. I guess maybe I'm not the perfect person to kind of prop up Trayvon Walker at 1 because I'm so low on him. But I just feel like he's a Ziggy Ansah type from his athleticism to just how he plays on the football field.
Well, and when you pop him, when you pop Trayvon Walker into mock draftable, if you do it at defensive end, Peyton Turner, Janarius Robinson, Ziggy Ansah III, Preston Smith, Daniil Hunter, Joe Tryon, Emmanuel Ogbah, Jadeveon Clowney,
Good players.
Gaines Adams, and Robert Quinn. I mean, that's the kind of comp, and Quinn is at like 69.3. So they're all pretty. I mean, like that's the kind of comps you want. I know he wasn't super productive, but if it stands to reason that I don't see why would you smoke screen at 1? It doesn't make any damn sense.
No,
it means you're just being a jerk if you're doing that. Any other thoughts on actually, sorry. Yeah. We're supposed to most confident you're in on a player. Traps. Who's your, if you had to feel you're like, this guy's going to be a above average pro, or like maybe not elite, but just like I'm confident this guy will be good. Who is it?
It's Aiden Hutchinson. And I think part of your question would be part of my answer that I don't know for sure. Like I don't feel super duper confident that Aiden Hutchinson is going to be like the next Joey Bosa or Nick Bosa, but I feel very confident that he will be that 3-down defensive end. He'll be a 6 to 10 sack guy at the very least. Most every season, 40 to 60 pressure, somewhere in that range. The pass rushing moves are too good. The strength is there. I think he actually bends around the corner pretty well. He's not the freaky explosive athlete of Kayvon Thibodeau or Trayvon Walker or really even Jermaine Johnson. But I just think how refined he is and how he improved all 3 years at Michigan really leads me to believe that he will not be a bust. He will be a quality pro at the very worst for the next decade.
Josh, do you have a buyer beware for an edge player that you would be on the lookout for? I think Traps had listed Trayvon Walker, but we already talked about him. Yeah. Maybe that's your answer too. I mean, certainly he's a riskier, or in theory, a riskier prospect than Hutchinson.
Yeah, at one point I may have said Jermaine Johnson, the second from Florida State. I'm still not as high on him as other people, but I would say that he was more of a slow burn for me. I grew to like him a lot more as I watched him more. Trayvon Walker, like Trap said, is kind of the one that carries a lot more risk because he's going to be asked to do something at the next level that he really hasn't shown to this point. So you can get excited about the size and the athletic traits. But we really don't know what the future is going to hold for him. Now, as I've said, in the past, I don't see a number one overall caliber prospect in this draft class. So, when you're looking to possibly take a guy that could reach that level of play, I think Walker is one of the few that has a chance to possibly get there if he does reach this unworldly potential that he has.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy, man. Like the idea of taking. And then actually really quickly on just before we move on from edge, like Kayvon Thibodeau, as I mentioned, the steam is picking up for number 2. I think there's a pretty good chance we could see 3 edge players go off in order to start this draft off. And then you have the Jets at 4 and they have to decide, do we take one of these offensive linemen or do we go with Sauce Gardner, who I certainly think they would be interested in and don't think they'll get him at 10. The fascinating thing, I think, is that it's sort of a hot take, but like the 2 most important or the 2 most influential players on the entire draft are Mekhi Becton and Laramie Tunsil because they're going to impact what the Jets and the Texans do at 3 and 4.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for the Jets, they could really sell their whole organization, their fan base, the media on, hey, we're going to pick Evan Neal here at 4 because we're not in love with Mekhi Becton. Laramie Tunsil's still good, and the Texans, obviously said that they're not going to trade him. I think he's a better player, which would lend me to believe that they're probably at 3, like you mentioned, just go 1, 2, 3, the best edge rusher that's available. If that is even Aiden Hutchinson, which seems crazy like 2 weeks ago, if that's the case, I think the Texans, to have that other pick that they got in the Deshaun Watson trade at 13 from the Browns, they could pick Kayvon Thibodeau at 3 and then, pick the, Derek Stingley at 13 or just go best player available there. But yeah, I do think there's a pretty good chance that we'll see edge, and then edge for the first 3 selections.
And sorry, go ahead, Josh.
I was going to say, grab a shovel, Will, because, you could dig a little deeper there. James Bradbury, Baker Mayfield, 2 other guys that, kind of hold the cards for draft night. If you
feel free to steal that. Feel free to steal that. Like non-draft players who are the most, I'm obviously not going to write it. I mean,
it's a good idea. I mean, if Baker is traded to Carolina or Seattle, then you're probably taking them out of the quarterback market.
100%.
If the Giants trade James Bradbury, then it becomes infinitely more likely that they're to take Derek Stingley Jr. or Sauce Gardner from Cincinnati in the top 10.
Agreed. Traps, give me a sleeper edge guy and a small school standout edge guy. We'll just lump those together for sake of purposes.
The sleeper is Tyreek Smith from Ohio State. There was some buzz that he could have been a day 2 pick last year. If you look at his pass rush win rate, it was up there like 20%, which is crazy high. It was higher than a lot of the other top edge rushers that we've been talking about. And then I looked at his pro day, and his measurables are actually pretty close to Kayvon Thibodeau. Now, on the field, he's not as explosive or bendy, but I think he uses his hands really well. We know those Ohio State defensive ends, they're coached so well, and they know how to use their hands. They have all the pass rushing moves in the arsenal. Tyreek Smith really is getting like 0 buzz whatsoever, even like later. I think 2nd or 3rd round, I would be fine with the team picking him. And maybe he's not going to set the edge and be your 700 snap per season defensive end, but just as a pass rushing specialist, I think he gives you a lot right out of the gate. And then small school guy, Dominique Robinson from Miami of Ohio. I believe he was a former wide receiver or tight end. Josh is like really good with those positional switches to like know all of them because there's so many in today's college game. Played on the offensive side, super long, had an over 40-inch vertical at the Miami of Ohio Pro Day, tested really well at the combine, just needs to get a little bit stronger. He's like 6'4", only 245 pounds, needs to get bigger and stronger to deal with the power that he's going to see at the next level. But I really like his bendiness and his explosiveness. That's really the foundational traits that you want to have at edge rusher. So anywhere maybe as high as the 3rd or the 4th round, I would be fine. Early day 3 if a team picked Dominique Robinson as that developmental edge rusher.
I dig it. Let's talk other defensive linemen very quickly. the Traps, give us your top 5. It's a non-edge guy, so top 5 defensive linemen.
Yeah, DL is usually just interior defensive linemen that are not going to be standing up on the edge. Tied for first, I have Logan Hall from Houston and Devontae Wyatt from Georgia. I think they're both great pass rushers. Devontae Wyatt's a little bit more of that classic, kind of reminds me of Marcel Darius, to be honest, defensive tackle. Logan Hall is kind of that inside-out type, but really long arms, great pass rusher. At number 3, I have Jordan Davis. I'm just lower in general on pure nose tackles. I don't think he quite plays to the explosiveness he showed at the combine. I think he's going to play heavier than that and not be quite as quick as he was in Indianapolis. The pass rushing moves aren't really there. He wins with speed through the line, and he's 6'7", 360 pounds. Number 4, Fedarian Mathis from Alabama. My only concern with him is that he's a little older. I believe he's 23 or about to turn 24 pretty soon. But the pass rushing moves are there. He's not your classic Alabama defensive lineman in that he can get upfield. He can rush the passer. I like that about his game. And then at number 5, Matthew Butler, another one that's an older prospect, a little bit like Logan Hall in that he's not 320 pounds. He can play end. He can play nose tackle. He can move up and down the line. The pass rushing juice is there. I like his hustle, how much of a high motor he has. Feels like a third or a fourth round pick. So it's not a great interior defensive line class, but that's my top 5.
Josh, if you want, you may now rake Traps over the coals for acting like Jordan Davis is not going to be a superstar at the next level. He's also just buyer beware interior defensive lineman. Like,
yes.
I mean, I would probably take Jordan Davis with the top 10 pick. Like he's 341 pounds and he ran like a 4.79 or something like that. Like that's a literal, it's not, I don't want to call it a unicorn because, unicorns are usually like smaller and not, like gigantic humans. But I mean, man, like, give me Jordan Davis on my team. I'll tell you that much.
Will, I'll tell you what, I am exhausted because I've been fighting this battle with Traps and Wilson for so long.
Yes.
I have said that he's got more burst and pass rush potential than he's shown at Georgia. We've talked ad nauseum about that Georgia defensive front and how they use a lot more stunts and loops to create chaos rather than just working up the field vertically. Davis, I will say this. He has been more of a 2-down player to this point in his career.
Sure.
And if he's going to carry that weight, he has lost some weight. So maybe that's part of the emphasis on being more of a 3-down player at the next level. But if he's going to have the same playing weight that he has had in college, then it's reasonable to question if he's going to be a 2-down player. If he's going to be a 2-down player, you would prefer those 2 downs to be in rundown situations. That's just more of what his strength is. You can argue up and down about his pass rush potential, but he's a run stuffer all day long. So you want him to be on the field for those 2 downs. If you are comfortable with where his weight currently is and him sustaining that level and your belief that he could be a 3-down player, top half of the first round all day long. But if you do not believe that, then I can understand Traps' opinion a little bit more, where you're probably looking late day 1, possibly even into early day 2.
I think the Chargers would be a fascinating fit for Jordan Davis because they were so bad against the run last year. Like if you add him, and I don't think they're necessarily going to take him because I don't think he'll fall to them, and 2, I've heard a lot of chatter about them taking a cornerback. I think you can bet that. Do we have a team? You bet like which team drafts who on Caesars yet?
What position? I don't know if you can bet what position. I feel like you can bet everything today. So yeah,
there's a 3-1 out there on somewhere at a different site on the Chargers taking a cornerback. I like that a lot, just from what I've heard. But Jordan Davis, man, he's a freak of nature. Credit to Josh Norris, friend of the pod. I heard him talking on Around the NFL podcast recently, and he's like, look, there's literally never been anyone like this guy coming into the NFL. I mean, I want gigantic Godzilla unicorns on my team. Like, give me the Godzilla unicorns all day long when it comes to that. Traps, give me a sleeper at the interior defensive line and then a small school standout.
All right, this is a name that I'm excited to talk about when we're in Fort Lauderdale doing our live show. Ioma Uwazurike from Iowa State. He's an older prospect.
I'm not excited to talk about that.
I'm excited to hear Brinson try to say
Wait,
that
hold on,
when he's
let's see.
actually selected.
I just want to see if I can do this. Like
Just read it out.
Ioma Uwazurike.
There you go. So now you got it. Now it's in the back of your mind. You'll be able to spit it out. I love his versatility. 6'6", over 300 pounds. You watch him on film, he's playing edge rusher a lot in a predominantly three-man front at Iowa State. But they moved him up and down the line. Talked about the lack of pass rushing moves with Jordan Davis. Uwazurike has those pass rushing moves. Now, he's certainly not a Jordan Davis level athlete, but it feels like more defenses want their defensive tackles to be able to move up and down, two gap if they need to, make plays against the run. He feels like someone that could go early day 3, or it wouldn't surprise me if he's picked way later. But I thought he was very productive on all 3 downs at Iowa State. Older prospect, maybe not a ton of upside, but with Uwazurike, it's going to take me some time too. I think he's a hit the ground running prospect that as a rookie, you know what you're getting. Very high floor with him.
I dig it. Josh, let's talk some linebackers. Who are your top 5 linebackers? Or do you want me to read them so you don't have to use up valuable voice time and you can just analyze? I'll read them. You analyze them.
Let's do that.
Yeah. Nakobe Dean 1, Devin Lloyd 2, Quay Walker 3, Leo Chenal, which sounds like, I don't know, like somebody who runs a Jewish deli in Manhattan or something like that. And then Troy Anderson at 5 for you, your top 5 linebackers. Highlight somebody, even maybe Nakobe Dean, who you listed as you're confident in as a. By the way, I've said this a couple times. I'll say it again. I think we'll go back and look at this Georgia defense like we look at the LSU offense from Joe Burrow's championship year, where it's like, oh my God, they had 7 Pro Bowl caliber NFL players on there, including Nakobe Dean.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of overtook Devin Lloyd late in the process for me because I was very high on Lloyd from the beginning. A guy that has improved in coverage. He can play sideline to sideline. He's got great ball skills. Nakobe Dean is just an incredibly intelligent player. He's willing to do anything that you ask of him on defense. He'll do all the dirty work. He'll take on blocks. He'll fight down the line and work upstream. I mean, he does everything that you need him to do as a linebacker. So that's why I have a little bit more confidence in his transition to the NFL, even if by standards he is a little bit undersized traditionally. I mean, he's 5'11", 229 pounds, so traditionally undersized, but a guy that with the way that he approaches the game, his intelligence, I just don't see a way that this guy is not successful at the next level. Quay Walker is a guy that, on that Georgia defense was a role player for most of his career, a reserve player. I think you saw this year that he's capable of playing sideline to sideline as well. He can fit run gaps. He can drop into coverage. I mean, this is a guy that, is not quite Jordan Davis level unicorn, but a guy that size, speed, potential, is off the charts. So I think you're kind of banking on what he could become given a larger sample size at the next level. Leo Chenal, another one of those slow burn guys for me. I did not see what everybody else was seeing early in the process. And the more that I watched him, I started to see that. He ran a 4.53 at the combine to go along with, 6'2", 260 pounds. He's incredible. And then Troy Anderson, a guy that's just scratching the surface of what he could become. He can drop into coverage, but he's still learning how to work sideline to sideline and what offenses are trying to do to him. So another one of those guys that really still has some room to grow at the next level, even if athletically he's probably ahead of a lot of these other guys in this class.
Traps, is there somebody we should be worried about? Potentially like a buyer beware type. I know that I believe Josh had listed Brandon Smith as his buyer beware. Is there anybody that you're worried about in this linebacker class, whether it's on Josh's top 5 or somebody else from the class?
Brandon Smith's a good one because he misses a lot of tackles. He's that size, speed, athleticism specimen, but almost every game, it's 3 or 4 tackles that need to be made are not made by him. I think it's actually Leo Chenal from Wisconsin in that if he was entering the NFL 10 years ago, I think he'd be a Patriots pick in the first or the second round and just play downhill, be that Brandon Spikes or that Willie McGinnis type. In today's NFL, I think he's going to be a liability in coverage right away. Now, maybe he does land with the Patriots or a team that's just going to deploy him in that strong side linebacker role near the line of scrimmage, ask him to attack the quarterback, be a spy, blitz. In coverage, I didn't really see it from him. He had a couple interceptions, but they were like tip passes. So to me, someone that's like Josh is saying was a slow burn, not just for him, but for the entire draft community that as people watched him, they saw the 40-inch vertical at the combine, said, man, this guy's probably an early day 2 pick. I think he's going to get onto a football field, and offensive coordinators at the NFL level are going to say, let's target him in coverage and make him not just sink into coverage, but cover our tight ends and man and really have that spatial awareness that's needed to be good in coverage. I didn't see him have to really do that very often at Wisconsin. So for me, Leo Chenal, good player on the first 2 downs, but on third down or those obvious passing situations, I think he's got a ways to go.
Traps, Josh listed Micah McFadden as his sleeper to try and give Josh some reprieve, because I can tell he's fighting through it. Tell me, give me the lowdown on Micah McFadden, and Josh, you can jump in on your small school standout.
Micah McFadden is a great selection. He reminds me so much of Josie Jewell, who went on day 3 to the Broncos from Iowa a few years ago, 2018 draft, I believe. Micah McFadden has the change of direction ability and the experience and effectiveness in coverage that a lot of these other more marquee linebackers just don't have in this draft class. I think he leaves a little bit to be desired athletically, but the short area quickness is so important today at the linebacker spot. You have to be able to stop, plant, and drive on the football. His instincts are good. He's very instinctive and assertive against taking on blocks. That's really important too. So I think that's a great selection. Someone's going to pick him 3rd to 5th round, probably a little later, probably 5th round, and get a starter like the Broncos got in Josie Jewell.
Yeah, and a guy that had 12.5 sacks over the past 2 years. So you're getting a guy that, can
Good
rush
blitzer.
the passer a little bit as well. Exactly. My small school standout is Troy Anderson. Conventionally, we would not be talking about one of my top 5 linebackers as a small school standout, but he has, crossed that threshold. He's a small school player that also happens to be very good. At the NFL Combine, he was one of the better performers. Like I said, he still has to kind of learn the game a little bit and understand what he's seeing to react more quickly. But athletically, we've seen the NFL be drawn to these type of players in recent years. Jamin Davis, by all accounts, had some learning to do before he got into the NFL, and yet he was taken in the 1st round. So those teams are going to be drawn to the athleticism that Anderson brings.
All right, let's move along. Great stuff, of course. Let's move along to cornerback. Man, Deebo really beefing up this rundown, huh? The entire defense. It's been a whole podcast of 5 crappy quarterbacks. I don't know why I'm complaining about Deebo. Deebo does a great job. Although the rumor is he's demanding a trade. That's a Deebo joke. Anyway, Josh, your top 5 cornerbacks. 1, Ahmad Sauce Gardner. 2, Derek Stingley Jr. 3, Kyer Elam. 4, Kyler Gordon. And 5, Trent McDuffie, which is really interesting because Trent McDuffie's over-under currently 17.5. He's sort of projected to be that 3rd corner taken. You have him at 5 there, though. And certainly, I think you might going to nitpick the, Sauce and Stingley up top. Talk to me about why you got McDuffie and no Booth either.
I think it's just his size. Traditionally he's probably, more of a slot cornerback, zone heavy kind of guy. So I don't think he's going to be a fit for everybody. I was looking more at the players that have man coverage potential. Those are the ones that I really covet in the 1st round. So that's maybe why I would ding McDuffie a little bit, even though he's one of the more instinctual players in this class.
Traps, if you're going to pound the table for one of these cornerbacks, who would you go with?
Well, I'm going to actually look at our rundown and see who Josh had. He had Roger McCreary, and that truly is someone that I would pick too.
Okay.
The only knock on Roger McCreary, his arms are 29 inches, which is really, really short for the cornerback spot, especially he played on the perimeter and he played a lot of man coverage. But his film, you ask myself, Josh, Ryan, any draft analyst, they'll tell you his film is of 1st round caliber. He just kind of got knocked because he ran only 4.50 at the combine, and the arms are super duper short. I think in terms of just maybe never being an all pro because maybe his lack of length holds him back, that could happen with Roger McCreary, but he feels like he's going to be a 10 plus year solid pro because his instincts, the twitchiness, the ball skills are all, I think, of first round caliber.
Josh, you listed buyer beware on Andrew Booth out of Clemson. Is it injuries or is it a skill situation?
Yeah, it's more of the injury. He's got a core muscle situation, surgery that he had post season. So that's something that you have to be a little concerned about. Booth is one of the guys that played a little zone heavy in college, but I think has man coverage potential more than a lot of the guys that you would possibly get late day one, even into day two. So I value him as one of those guys that can become a man coverage player at the next level. And then back to Roger McCreary. I mean, he was playing the SEC. Like, this is not a guy that was playing MAC level competition, no offense to the MAC, but he was, playing against the Jameson Williams on a weekly basis and, was holding his own.
Yeah. I mean, that matters for sure. Zion McCollum, sleeper for Josh. Traps, you want to give a breakdown and then Josh can jump in on his small school standout?
Yeah, I can because I love Zion McCollum. I have an early second round grade on him. We talked about Jordan Davis acing his combine. Zion McCollum did the same. I mean, 6'2", 200 pounds. Arms are a little bit short for being 6'2". I think they were under 32 inches. But his film from Sam Houston State, I mean, it's kind of the opposite of playing in the SEC. His film was outstanding. There was like 2 plays, I believe it was against Montana State, where he lost the football down the field, gave up some big plays. Outside of that, he was as sticky in coverage as any cornerback in this draft class. So you're watching that at the FCS level saying, okay, well, how good of an athlete is he? And then, like I mentioned, he aces what he did at the combine, the 40, the 3-cone, the vertical, the broad jump. I think he could go as early as the second round and has that athletic makeup along with the coverage instincts to be a really good pro for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, running a 4.33 at the NFL Combine at that size is absolutely incredible. And I could have gone with him as my small school standout, but we do not accept the bare minimum here at the Pick Six podcast. Okay, so
sure, my friend, we accept the bare minimum here.
So I dug a little bit deeper. I went to Fayetteville State for Joshua Williams, who is also 6'2", 193 and 195 and ran a 4.51 at the NFL Combine. So you're talking about that size, that speed. You typically do not see that at that level of competition. So he's going to have a transition, obviously, that's going to be a little bit more difficult than some of these other guys that played against SEC competition. But when you're looking at traits that you can work with at the next level, Williams has some that you can get excited about.
I dig it. All right, let's wrap up with safeties. Your top 5 safeties, Josh. No surprise. Kyle Hamilton 1, Jalen Petrie 2, Lewis Seen. Is it Seen or Sign?
Seen.
Cool. I should have just kept talking and just let y'all interrupt me if I got it wrong. Lewis Seen. Now I'm scared I'll get it wrong here. Jeez Louise. Lewis Seen at 3, Daxton Hill at 4, and Jaquan Brisker at 5. Last been made to Kyle Hamilton. I think it's been reported or discussed that if he's there at 11, the Commandos or whatever the hell they're calling themselves are going to sprint to the podium to grab Kyle Hamilton. Seems like he is going to fall a little bit further in the draft than maybe early mock drafts had it going. But he's been discussed a lot. I think people might be more curious, Josh, to hear about the guy you would pound the table for in Jalen Petrie.
Yeah, Jalen Petrie and Daxton Hill were a few of the safeties that I watched late in the process or got back around to late in the process. I'd already watched them, but for me, Petrie is just a guy that's always around the football. He's a highly productive player that you just feel confident is going to have success at the next level. Like Daxton Hill, he can play slot cornerback, so he gives you a little bit of that versatility. And really, I'm liking this safety class a lot more than what I would have expected at the beginning of this process because I love Hamilton, I love Seen, I love Petrie, I love Daxton Hill. So, there's a lot of guys to be excited about, and I think you can get good value even into the later portion of day 2. So really good safety class that we have this year, and it's probably better than what we've seen in the last couple of years.
Josh's had Jaquan Brisker as his buyer beware, and then his sleeper was Kirby Joseph. Traps, give me the little rundown on old Kirby, Kerby, which is just an abomination to
Kirby.
all Kirby's out there.
Yeah, seriously. Kirby Joseph, super long, over 33-inch arms.
Wow.
And it shows on film. He's really that deep middle of the field, free safety. Going to take an extra second to recognize what's happening, if it's a run play, if it's play action, if it's not. But if you just let him roam the deep middle, maybe the intermediate portion of the field, and play the football, watch the quarterback's eyes, he's going to have a lot of interceptions. He had a bunch of them last year, I believe, 4 or 5 interceptions. And with that length, with his fluidity that he shows, to be able to turn, flip those hips, find the football, I think is outstanding. It's a really good selection. He could go as high as the 2nd or 3rd round. But for that specific role, to just be that deep middle safety, that free safety that we don't really see too frequently come out in the draft, that has high level range, that is Kirby Joseph from Illinois.
And your small school sleeper, Josh, Marquise Bell.
Yeah, he's kind of got linebacker size. So he's one of those overhang linebackers, essentially, where he may be listed as a safety, he may be drafted as a safety, but he's probably going to be playing down in the box quite a bit. From Florida A&M, I think he's probably mid to late day 3 somewhere. But when you're looking for players that could serve certain roles at the next level, Marquise Bell is a guy that can give you a little bit more in the box while not sacrificing too much in coverage.
I dig it. Man, we ripped through the entire defensive side of the ball in this draft in less than an hour. Amazing work by you two. I mean, Lord knows, anyway, I'm not going to rip the quarterbacks anymore. I'm tired of these quarterbacks. I want Desmond Ridder to be the first quarterback taken, then nobody else in the first round. Everybody's like, what the hell just happened? Anyway, this defensive class is going to be very important. Tons of edge guys up top. And of course, we'll be back tomorrow to discuss offensive prospects. So make sure to subscribe, rate, and review. For Traps, for Josh, I'm Brinson. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We will see you guys